In Coalition Society, the army was the focal point, and society in the Gears of War expanded universe revolved around the policies and ideologies that the COG was founded upon. As a military superpower comprising of many member nations, the coalition of ordered governments had different branches as part of the armed forces for their war effort, serving different purposes within the COG military. So as always, I'm your host Abz, and here are the different COG branches in Gears of War lore. Firstly, the main branch was the COG army itself, which was found prior to the Pendulum Wars, and was the main fighting force against the Union of Independent Republics, and the Locust Horde for that matter. The COG army was the focal point in the Pendulum Wars, and fought in many battles across Zera. But with the COG army drawing down after winning the Pendulum Wars, the COG army was unprepared for the emergence of the Locust threat on Emergence Day. The COG counterattack against Locust had ultimately failed, with many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of battle-hardened gears killed throughout the conflict. The COG was forced to recruit the old, the young, the stranded, and convicts. Of course, they were nothing like the veterans that had died in the Pendulum Wars.
Damn, talk about a graveyard.
Dirty grub, shit all over this place. I got no respect for the dead.
A lot of good soldiers from the Pendulum Wars buried here. Sure could use those men now.
Gear soldiers mostly came from Tyrus, the South Islands, and Kashkur. The Gears were the standard frontline troops, while the recently introduced Commandos, or the Special Tactics Group, were the behind enemy lines Special Forces troops. Then we have the COG Air Corps, which, as it says on the tin, was the aerial arm of the COG, which proved vital to the success of military operations. The COG Air Corps provided air support and evacuation for the troops on the ground by use of Ravens and King Ravens. The COG Air Force partook in many major battles in the Locust War, but unfortunately took heavy casualties from the many different hollow creatures that the Locust Horde used in their war effort. From Cedars, Nemesists, Siege Beasts, Brumacs, and more that would inflict heavy damage to any air support.
Will we have air support? What? Are you kidding? You are the support, son!
After the sinking of Jacinto at the end of Gears 2, it was difficult for the Air Corps to protect all of the settlements, as the COG was too widely dispersed. It became harder to maintain the King Ravens, and so the Air Corps was reduced heavily. There was also the naval arm of the COG, also known as the ncog. The COG Navy had more success during the Pendulum Wars, as opposed to the Locust War. For a time, the Navy lacked the necessary funding and attention compared to the COG Army, but the Defense Select Committee were eventually convinced to provide more funding and supplies, but it was always below the COG Army. The ncog had special forces for amphibious assaults, and had many naval forces such as submarines, assault ships, and so on. Since the Locust War was a ground war, and supplies went towards the Gears, the Navy was left too despaired and abandoned, but it was able to keep fleet formations along with civilian ships. But the Navy proved vital in the sinking of Jacinto in order to evacuate civilians and transporting the remaining human population to Vectus. In Gears of War 3, the Navy was vital in defending Vectus from Lambent attacks, and the remnants of the Navy arrived with the Grozny fleet at the end of Gears 3 to help retake the island of Azura and finally defeat the Locust and the Lambent for good. Then finally we had the COG Engineering Corps, who were the unsung heroes of the war. They were in charge of obtaining and delivering fresh supplies of food and water to Jacinto and the COG army, so they ran the Northgate farm and maintained the pipelines that carried water to Jacinto. The Engineering Corps were also known as sappers, or wrenches, but despite being of great importance to the survival of humanity, they were underfed due to the COG's policy of only giving high-calorie rations to Gears and pregnant women. Gabe Diaz is the most recognisable character we see that represents this branch in the COG. So that, my friends, are the different COG branches in Gears of War lore. Drop a like if you enjoyed this lore video, subscribe for more similar content like this, and I'll leave a link at the top right of the screen if you want to watch my other lore videos as well. I'm your host Abz, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.